Last week was a drag, wasn't it? The election is creeping closer. Hurricanes are wreaking havoc. I mean, it's chaos. Girl, I need a drink.
And I'm just like you, 'cause there's a way that I'm different. You got to see the truth about me.
Because this is our first episode, we want to be clear about what this show is about. So we're kicking off with talking about the upcoming election.
Well, yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day, and as an Indigenous person myself, I want to talk about how marginalized groups in this country are politicized in this election. How much do you ladies know about Native support for Tim Walz in particular?
Not enough. I'd like to know more.
That's okay. So 11 tribal nations across Minnesota, which is all of the recognized tribal nations in Minnesota, members from those nations actually signed a letter of support for Walz that was sent to the Harris campaign. And this was a little while ago, but it's largely due to Walz's sort of proven commitment to tribal-state relations, including the appointment of a Native woman as interim lieutenant governor. That being said, there's also a lot of Native opposition to the Harris-Walz campaign. Largely from the left, actually.
I got to know, would you say that has anything to do, or would you say that there's at least a parallel in terms of what's happening in Palestine right now?
I think that's actually a really big part of it. I think a lot of us Native people are seeing the parallels in our own struggle and the struggle of Palestinians. And Harris's support for that ongoing genocide is a sticking point for a lot of people. People are feeling less than enthusiastic about her campaign.
Yeah, I know for me at least, it's been a little bit of a struggle. I was really excited when Biden dropped out of the election. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people were just nervous that the Democratic Party would not win if they continued to run Biden.
Yeah,
I was nervous. I thought he was going to be a one-term candidate when I voted for him in 2020.
Agreed.
And I will say he was my last pick out of all of the candidates that ran in 2020. I begrudgingly voted for him, thinking, okay, I would much rather have my least favorite Democrat win than Trump for a second term. And now here we are again, 4 years later, worried about a second term for Trump.
Yeah.
What do you think the Harris and Walz campaign should do or propose that would make the left happy with what they're doing with Palestine?
An arms embargo, I think, is the big one. I think that's major. Stop funding what's happening there. I think also shifting their climate policy. I know that's a little bit away from the subject, but I think a lot of, at least from a Native perspective, people are concerned about their climate policy as well.
Yeah.
And even to add to that, what is happening right now in Palestine, the sheer number of weapons that we're sending that are going off, I think that not a lot of people know that the U.S. military is the number one industrial polluter in terms of emissions. Just because of the sheer amount of money that we throw into the Pentagon every year.
Yeah.
And anytime that we are in any sort of war phase, that exacerbates. And so the war right now, it's not only a humanitarian issue, but it's also a climate issue. And so I think for me, that's one of the reasons that I was disappointed to see Kamala backtrack on her opposition to fracking.
Yeah, that was a disappointment.
But at the same time, what are the other options? And I think that's the big conflict that a lot of us are having right now is we want to support the Democratic Party because we have hope that the Democratic Party will take care of us, but they're not really living up to it. But that's not to say that Republicans will do any better. I'm terrified,
of course we don't want Trump to
of a
win.
Republican coming in.
But is there something that can be said about the fact that, they did call for a ceasefire?
They
Yeah.
did.
It's something. It's something.
Compared to months ago, that wasn't
That was
something
not
that they were
even
calling
on
for. So, steps are being made. I feel like there's also, something to say, maybe things have to move a little slower.
Yeah.
It's been a slow moving process.
It's been a year at
It's
this
been
point.
a year, so...
I'm happy that they are at least saying that they're calling for a ceasefire.
Right.
In fact, I've been seeing the term tirelessly working around the clock for a ceasefire being thrown around. But in the same breath, I'm seeing approval for many more billions of dollars of weapons going overseas to Israel. And so for me, as a politician myself, I know that what I say holds less weight than what I do.
Yes.
And so I want to see, when you say you want a ceasefire, I think part of that involves an arms embargo, stopping the weapons. So And I get that it's I almost said nuanced. I don't like the term nuanced in this realm, but it is complicated in terms of the sense of like everything that's happening and how much money is going over and how many people are involved. I want to see our tax dollars not being used to kill people. I want to see them being used to give people health care, housing, and education.
Exactly that. I was listening to something earlier this morning. It was an episode of The Daily talking about how New York and California are going to be really pivotal in terms of the House and what that's going to look like in this election, which I think is also a really important piece of this upcoming election. Is not just who's going to be the president, but also what the Congress is going to look like.
Right.
Because a very blue Congress could make it harder for a Republican president. Not that I want that to happen, but there are checks and balances. There are things in place to make sure that even if a Republican gets elected,
But do these checks and balances actually work? And
not as well as they should.
Because if we go back and we, go back to the previous Trump administration, who was checking him?
We did impeach him
twice.
And that stopped what?
And we blocked a few things, not enough.
Exactly.
It's just, I feel like our government, the way it works is just so complicated. There's too many players in the game, and things are just not moving as fast as I would like it to.
But in many ways, that's almost a good thing because you can't just have somebody, you can't just have a dictator wannabe come in and say, okay, I'm in power now, this is how it's going to be. So it is a good thing in the idea of that, but it is kind of a stinky thing when we want to see things like universal health care, housing guarantees, employment guarantees, environmental justice. So it moves slower in both directions.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think the ideal outcome would be that we get a Democratic president and resecure both houses and not just have a very slim margin in the Senate. And I think California, when it comes to Senate, I think we're fine. We're gonna have 2 Democratic senators, but we have over 50 congressional representatives in California. We have the most number of U.S. House members. And while they are mostly Democratic, there are certainly a few Republicans. And these are the ones who are even, introducing bills that are harmful for queer people here in California.
Yeah.
We've been hearing a lot about anti-LGBTQIA legislation. And that's something that we think of in happening in these deep southern, deep red states. But, just even in 2024 alone, there has been bills introduced in California that would take away the rights of transgender people.
Yeah.
So it is really important for people to vote. And I think that, although some people might be not entirely enthused about the presidential ticket, it is so important to vote all the way down the ballot. Yeah. And the further down the ballot you go, the more of an impact it's going to have on your life, your family's life, your friends, your neighbors. Most people at this point know who they're going to vote for president.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would challenge you to ask your friends and see how many of them know who their congressional representative is, who their city council member is, who their school board member is, who the judges representing them are. And these are all people a part of the system that really dictate the way we are able to move through the world.
Yeah, it's so important to vote locally.
The election is less than a month away. You can vote now. Tell us in the comments who you're voting for and why. And now to Swade with the headlines.
Elon Musk impressed and terrified the country when he debuted his very intelligent humanoid robots, only to find out that they were being controlled by actual humans using specialized feedback suits. Can I meet one of these robot operators? I love me a man in a smart suit. Melania Trump's book came out recently. Turns out Chester Cheetah's wife is passionately pro-choice, a subject her very own husband has been very outwardly against his entire campaign. Yet another example of the only thing these two have in common is their love for money. This past week, thousands of people were left stranded in the desert after Donald Trump's rally in Coachella. The buses that shuttled them from the parking lot to the rally were not there, and it got real. Well, that's one way to make sure people don't leave your rally early. I got a better idea for you, Mr. Trump. Instead of kidnapping people, maybe people will stay at your rallies if you don't go on 3-hour rants about hot dogs.
hot dogs. Hot dogs. Hot dogs. Let's talk about hot dogs.
We here at Last Week Was a Drag fully support FEMA and all of the hard work that they're doing to help people in Florida, North Carolina, and all of the areas affected by recent climate disasters. But not everybody agrees with us. Why is everything so politicized, even when people's lives are at stake?
Money.
Money. Yeah,
Money.
It's so frustrating. There are these conspiracy theories essentially being spread about FEMA, and what I will say is there is very real historical basis to the South being neglected in moments of climate crisis. We saw that with Katrina, of course. It's not always exclusively under Democrat presidents. Obviously, there was not a Democrat in office during Katrina. So yes, there's basis to not enough being done to help people in disaster situations. But that's not what Republicans are spreading right now. They're spreading full-on, largely anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about weather machines.
Which is incredible. Like, first it's like, you know, what is it? Global warming is not a thing?
Yes.
Global warming isn't a real thing, but then it's like, we're manipulating the weather. I'm like, so which is it?
Yeah, and it's dangerous.
And that's such a great point that you bring. I am so amazed by the fact that some people just cannot wrap their heads around the fact that humans can impact climate change, but they somehow think that we have machines that are actually controlling the weather. It's so ridiculous to me. And also to the point of, you know, these weather machines and how certain Republicans have been, you know, very anti-Semitic about them, particularly Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, we can also not forget about, you know, she was the one promoting the conspiracy about Jewish space lasers.
Yes.
So it's very, I mean, I'm not surprised, but still incredibly disappointed.
I'm just interested to know where she gets the information from.
QAnon,
Oh, right. Facebook.
Reddit, Facebook.
Yeah. And it's so dangerous when these conspiracy theories spread. I was reading this article about how they had to evacuate FEMA workers from a certain area because there were literally militias hunting them down. Like, that's blocking people from actually getting the aid
And
they
Trump
need.
is inciting this.
Yes.
Just like
Yeah.
they did with January 6th.
Yes.
Like, it's just so frustrating that these people will believe these lies to fuel their hate and not protect themselves from these natural disasters that are happening. And like, yeah.
I think it's odd too that people aren't listening to their like local officials about what's being said. Like, they'd rather listen to Trump versus like your governor.
Yeah.
Your governor's like, please stop. Like, like stop saying these things. You're causing more harm than good. Like, so
Yeah, even the governors of some of these states that were impacted by the most recent hurricanes, they're Republican governors, and they have even said that the Biden administration has done the maximum amount that it can to be able to impact these folks in a positive way, to maximally fund FEMA, to get as much funding in there as possible. And yet you have Donald Trump spreading these lies, saying things that along the lines that Democrats are blocking funding from going towards recovery efforts, and it's not happening.
And it's not just FEMA, it's also like they're doing everything in terms of making sure that there are enough people on the ground. Like they're shipping people from other states to go ahead and like be of aid. And like you said, if they're over here creating blockades, you know, they're
What are you
local
blocking?
militias.
Yeah.
What are you blocking?
What are you blocking?
It's
so
weird.
The weather
It's such a
machine.
weird thing. Like, why would you ever try to stop people from getting the help that they need?
Yeah. Apparently the yeah, it's so disappointing to see these lies being spread, and it's dangerous. It's keeping people in harm's way.
Okay, Politicuties, we'd love to hear from you your favorite conspiracy theories in the comments.
Fun ones, though.
Ladies, I'm curious, of all these politicians out there, if you had to pick one, besides Kamala, who would you most want to have a drink with?
Am I allowed to say maybe a girl?
Oh, we're doing that after.
We're doing that after.
Let's dream less
Your wish will be
realistic.
granted.
Yeah.
Who do I want to have a drink with?
Ooh.
Okay, who do you think is going to be a fun
Politician.
time?
A politician.
You know, I have to say, I would rather have a drink with somebody that I disagree with.
I was just thinking that.
I would love to have a drink and really pick through some of the brains of some of these Republicans, you know, and it just have a firm understanding of why do you believe this? Like, why do you think this is actually true? So I don't know. I would pick somebody like, I don't know, Ted Cruz. As
go
much
ahead
as I
and
loathe
Cruz.
him.
Yeah, JD
Oh, I
Vance.
couldn't do it. I couldn't do Ted Cruz or JD.
Well, what I'm curious about JD is he's flip-flopped on his opinions on Trump. He's now Trump's running mate when, like, not too long ago, he was calling Trump, what was it, the Hitler of America or something along those lines?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear, what changed. I'm sure it's, money,
Power.
as is often or power, as is often the
He's
motivation.
waiting for him to get the boot so he can become president.
Ooh,
Imagine.
no.
But
I can't.
I think I would like to have a drink with Amy Klobuchar because she's surrounded by hot men all the time. And I feel like she's already drunk all the time. So I want to.
And wasn't it her Senate seats? Like, remember when the Twink got caught having
I do
relations in the
I
Senate
had a
chambers?
feeling that's what you were
I
referring to.
don't know. I could be incorrect, but I think it was Amy Klobuchar's like physical
recall.
seats.
Oh,
Amy.
her
Oh,
seat.
poor Amy.
Oh,
Or
God.
maybe lucky Amy, depending on her position on that.
I heard she loves Twinks.
Okay.
I believe in twink rights and twink wrongs.
Wrongs.
If a drink. Obama. I
Obama.
would want to have a drink with Obama.
That's fair.
I just want to fangirl
A drink
out.
and a. With Obama.
Yeah.
I mean, he does.
Absolutely. Yeah, because he
That's
had
my
to be
conspiracy
quiet about it.
theory. That
I don't think it's conspiracy.
I think it was.
It's facts.
It was pretty much.
he wrote it in his book, right?
I think he said it in his book.
I mean,
Yeah.
What president hasn't had a little
At this point.
toke?
Yeah.
You know,
No.
if I did have to pick somebody who is like on my side per se, I think I'd want to have a drink with Cori Bush, who was recently voted out of office. She's wrapping up her last congressional term because she was voted out this past time, and a lot of it I know had to do with her stances on Palestine and wanting to end the genocide in Palestine. And so I really would love to have a drink with her just to talk about what that experience was like for her and how it feels to be a politician, actually standing up for your values and what you believe in, and then seeing the consequences of the propaganda machine and AIPAC voting you out, and how we can conquer that moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I would buy Rashida Tlaib a drink, for sure. Am I pronouncing her last name right? Well,
Fact check us.
one of those names where
Yeah,
I'm
fact
always
check us in the
reading it,
comments.
but
I've
I
only
feel like I
read
don't hear it.
Yeah.
Well, if there's one politician I know I'd want to drink with, it's maybe a girl. Earlier today, our very own Leona Love sat down with Maybe to learn more about what it's like to be a drag queen running for a government seat.
So maybe we've known each other for several years now. I was the graphics person on your campaign for Congress 3 times. I have some questions I'd love to ask you.
Yeah, anything.
So what inspired you to run for office? First for Silver Lake Neighborhood Council and then later Congress.
Well, I think the big thing is I wanted to make a difference in my community. When I think about what a politician looks like and what I think many people think what a politician looks like, we often think of an older, wealthier, cisgender, heterosexual, white male. And that's not what our communities look like. That's not what our nation looks like. For me, I really wanted to make a direct difference in my community. And so I decided to run for neighborhood council, and I won. I think the big fear in running for any sort of elected office is that election day comes about and you've got one vote, and it's the one vote that you've cast for yourself. So I was so excited and enthused when I actually won my election, because I think folks voted for me not because I'm a drag queen, not because I'm a trans person, but because they liked the ideas that I wanted to bring to our community. And then after winning my local election, I thought to myself, well, I want to make a bigger impact. I want to make an impact that's going to, help people nationwide. And I thought about the fact that, when we talk about elections, all elections are local elections.
Yeah.
So even though you're voting for something on a federal level, it's still going to be the same community of people voting for you. I mean, perhaps a little bit larger than just your neighborhood. But I thought to myself, well, the folks in my neighborhood trust me to be their local representative. I hope they will trust me to be their federal representative. And interestingly, when you look at the results of my election, the areas that I did the best in were the areas that I'm already representing.
100%. And you talk about wanting to make a difference. I feel like you absolutely have already done that. What achievements in office are you the most proud of?
I will say this, it's hard to make a massive impact in the position that I'm in, simply for the fact that I'm not a part of a legislative body. I am an elected official, but we are an advisory body. So neighborhood councils in Los Angeles act as advisory boards to city council. So whenever a city council is making any sort of when they have plans to vote on something, we as a neighborhood council can chime in and officially either support or oppose. And one of the ways that we can do that is through what's known as the community impact statements. And so essentially, one of the biggest things that I'm proud of on being in the neighborhood council system is getting my neighborhood council to pass a ceasefire resolution, or rather a community impacts statement in support of a ceasefire resolution for city councils.
And that took some doing.
It did. It really did. We had a lot of pushback. I initially introduced the idea back in December 2023, and feelings were really hot at the time. Even for me as a Jewish person, and I know that you're Jewish as well, it's interesting being an anti-Zionist Jew. And there's this idea that, oh, well, if you don't support Israel and everything Israel does, then you're anti-Semitic. And I find that really problematic as a Jewish person.
100%.
So even just in my neighborhood council, getting them to support the idea of a ceasefire resolution on the city level was difficult, just because they were afraid of coming off as anti-Semitic. And for me, it's all about, presenting this idea that, I think that it's actually anti-Semitic to say that all Jews have to support Israel.
I agree.
To consider any sort of marginalized community as a monolith is in and of itself discriminatory. To think that this group thinks one way, this group thinks another way,
And that there could be no deviation.
Exactly. So I was really proud of that effort. Of course, it did take some effort. It failed the first time. We had to come back and do it again. But ultimately, I was happy that our neighborhood council supported a community impact statement asking city council to approve a ceasefire resolution. Some of the other things I'm proud of are getting a community fridge in Silver Lake. Food insecurity is something that affects everybody. So, having a resource in our community where anybody can go to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get food, or if you're somebody that has excess resources, to drop off food.
Yeah, I've dropped off food at those fridges.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's next for you? in politics?
That's a good question. So I'm serving my third term on the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, and I'm just about to start my re-election campaign for my fourth and final term. I'm allowed to be elected one more time before I'm termed out. I am in support of term limits. But, having lost my congressional election, it really made me stop and think, well, how can I actually make the impact that I wanted to make in a congressional level in my local area? So that's why I recently became the operations manager for SELA, Neighborhood Homeless Coalition. I was all about housing for all, making sure that everybody has these basic resources. And so I'm excited to be, starting on this new journey with SELA. But I also do have another political position in mind, not federal, but something more on the local level, or rather I should say statewide, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation.
Of course.
With me. It's always so much fun to
Always.
talk to
And
you.
I'm going to ask you to do the graphics as well.
I can't wait.
I feel like I'm in the presence of royalty. Maybe you are a true queen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. But I do have to say I'm against the monarchy.
So many of us have anxiety this election year more so than any other. I have anxiety even when it's not an election year. What are you all doing to soothe your election anxiety?
Ooh. For me, at least, I'm grateful that it's 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate when it's an election year because it just feels like the whole year you are thinking about this. But I hope everybody at this point has a game plan to vote. And again, I think that most people know who they're going to vote for on a presidential level if they're going to vote. And I think the thing is we have to really encourage people to vote. People think, oh, what does my one little vote do? And here's the thing, if everybody thought that way, nobody would vote. But if everybody thought the other way and everybody actually voted, I guarantee you there's more people out there that want to see, the kind of world that people like us want to see, a world where everybody has healthcare, housing, education, where we have climate justice, racial justice, LGBTQIA justice. And it really requires us to fight for it. So I don't know if that answered how I'm soothing my anxiety, but I think just, talking to people and finding out that others are voting and that they are politically active and involved in the process, I think that's so important. And that makes me feel it soothes my anxiety because I know that regardless of the outcome of the election, we have people on our side, we have community on our side, and we will continue to fight regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely feel like, have to surround yourself with people, but also educate yourself.
Yes, 100%.
Like, I feel like that would really, like, ease a lot of the anxiety. People are just getting fed information, and sometimes you need to actually go and seek it out.
Yeah.
Like, you find out what it is that's, like, causing you to have whatever, like, this buildup, and talk yourself down.
I will say, in sort of an opposite angle of what you just said in terms of educating yourself, something I am doing to soothe my anxiety, and it's a little mean as someone who's worked for a campaign myself, but I am opting out of those campaign texts. I am sending those stops. I am deleting them. I get it. I understand. It is important work to do that outreach. I'm getting like 15 a day.
It's too many.
And I can't handle it. And they're from states I don't live in and can't vote in.
Yeah.
I just need a break.
I think we have our mail-in ballots now, right? You guys got yours?
Yes.
If you mail in your ballot already, I think those
takes you
texts
off.
will stop.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
And I feel like voting early also does help me
Yeah,
soothe that
exactly.
anxiety. I'm like, I've gotten the vote out. My participation in this is over. And then, yeah, it really is about like leaning on community, reminding yourself that people are fundamentally good. And even like reaching out to parts of your community that aren't just your circle, I think is so helpful for relieving that stress.
I think for me, not to be all like woo-woo, but I've been talking to you guys. I've been doing a lot of yoga and meditation.
Yeah.
And you could even do it for free on YouTube. And that's been really helping my anxiety, not just about the election, but just in general, and helping my mobility, and then doing some meditation. I meditate every single day now. And I feel that's helping me not panic. Because I already have so much to panic about. I mean, getting ready for the show, getting ready for my life, working every single day to make a living. And then on top of that, having this impending doom that the orange monster is going to be back in office. So I think voting early for sure is helping my anxiety. I'm going to, take a time during this weekend to look up everyone that I need to look up. And I just want to ask you guys, how do you guys do your research for local elections?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yes.
For me, I have a few trusted guides that I rely on. I think voter guides are a really great way to
We should make one.
to go about that. We should make one.
should,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually about, well, when I was running for Congress, if I was their preferred candidate, I trusted that guy.
I get that.
So-
There's some really good ones out there. There's I think his name is Chris Rell.
Yes.
LA Forward.
LA
Or Move LA Forward. There's something like, but puts out a really comprehensive guide, like very well researched.
And I really like Knock LA. They put out a really good guide as well. And what's great about these guides is it's not just vote for this person, vote for this person, vote for this person. It's this is why we are supporting this person. This is why we are opposing their opponents. And then they even have some areas where it's like, well, this person wouldn't be our first pick, but it's our only pick, and they're better than the other candidates.
Yeah.
So I think providing that really allows people to decide, oh, okay, I trust this. For me, I will say, the tricky part, because again, most people know who they're going to vote for president. We're lucky if people know who they're voting for Congress or city council, but school board is so important. Judges.
Yeah,
and
judges are so important.
judges is really hard because they're nonpartisan.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have a D or an R or third-party candidate indicator next to their name. So you really do have to do your research, and that's why some of these guides end up becoming really handy.
And it's not just people that we're voting on. We're voting on policies too.
Yeah.
So those
the
are like,
measures,
the
propositions.
like these are like things that are also just as important because these are things that are they're staying there for as long as, until we vote it out, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same as like a person, like eventually they'll like age out. Like these are things that are going to affect us forever and our children and whoever. So I feel like, do your research. Look at the voter guides.
And even on that, I actually wanted to say I'm a part of one of the local, or one of the statewide propositions. So I am an honorary member of the leadership committee for Proposition 3, which is a California statewide proposition. Prop 3 is the freedom to marry proposition.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about this because, again, I think we have this almost foolish idea that because we live in a very liberal state, that we are protected and we have nothing to worry
Right.
about. But, lest we forget about, Prop 8 back in the late 2000s, which actually made it illegal for gay marriage to exist. It was only because of a nationwide allowance for gay marriage that gay marriage was ultimately allowed in California. Enough time has passed that we have sort of taken that for granted.
Yeah.
But in the California Constitution, it actually says marriage is between one man and one woman. And the only reason that queer people are able to get married in California is because of a nationwide status. So Prop 3, the Freedom to Marry proposition, it actually is going to it's going to change the California Constitution so that it no longer says marriage is between one man and one woman. So it's going to not only guarantee that queer people can get married, but that interracial marriage is also allowed.
Huge.
So
Yeah.
I hope everybody votes yes on Prop 3.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing you can do to soothe your anxiety is vote. Down the ballot, locally, not just for president.
And I got to let it speak. 'Cause I've been hiding and it's hurting me.
Encourage others to vote.
Just to try
Activate
to
your
keep
community.
the peace.
Surround yourself with people who care about the world and others.
And tune in next week to Last Week Was a Drag.